Hey, my name is Drew Boa, founder of Husband Material, where I help men outgrow porn. Today, we are talking about Covenant Eyes and other accountability software like Accountable to You and Ever Accountable, because right now, there is a public controversy about these services. Now, for a while, people have disagreed about the usefulness of accountability software and how important it is within the recovery community. But right now, it's a little bit more public. So, in this episode, I want to tell you what's going on, what I think about it, and what I would recommend in regards to Covenant Eyes and other accountability software. This actually feels kind of vulnerable for me to talk about right now, and I wasn't even sure if I should do this episode because I've never covered current events before, and this is controversial. So, there's a part of me that hesitates to talk about it. Instead, I'm going to take a redemptive risk and let you know what's going on, what I think about it, and what I would recommend. First of all, what's going on? According to the Covenant Eyes website, on Wednesday, September 21st, Google removed the Covenant Eyes Sensor app from the Google Play Store because they believe it violates their malware policy. Now, why did Google do this? It was immediate action in response to investigative journalism by Wired magazine, published in an article called The Ungodly Surveillance of Anti-Porn Shameware Apps, specifically talking about Covenant Eyes, mentioning Accountable to You, and also the Fortify app. The article describes them as invasive phone monitoring tech. So the issue here is digital privacy, as well as some religious agendas that could be at play here. There's a quote in the article from a church member who was asked to use Covenant Eyes by a church leader saying, I wouldn't quite call it spyware, it's more like shameware, and it's just another way the church controls you. These are some significant accusations, and while I'm not an expert in digital privacy laws, I am very well researched and experienced in helping men outgrow porn. And oftentimes my students and clients and community members will ask me, what do you think about accountability software? Well, here's what I think about it, and especially what I think about these accusations. Is Covenant Eyes shameware? No, Covenant Eyes is not shameware. Covenant Eyes is software. Now, the truth is, sometimes accountability software does get used to shame people. And the article in Wired magazine gives an example of that. Church leaders using this software to be what I call the porn police for their members. In those situations, where is the shame coming from? It's not coming from the product, it's coming from the people. And as I will argue, it comes from purity culture. It's not coming from the product of the accountability software. The product is a tool. Now, for example, another powerful tool, which might be labeled shameware, could be Instagram or Facebook, where you go online, you see a lot of people with their amazing airbrushed lives. That can easily fuel shame and a shame cycle. Here's my point. Instagram itself is not shameware, but the way that you use it could be fueling a cycle of shame. And by the way, Instagram has an agenda to capture your attention and show you advertisements so that in your shame and feeling bad about yourself, you might be more likely to buy something. Now, Covenant Eyes also has an agenda, and that agenda is beautiful. The mission of Covenant Eyes, as I understand it, is to support relationships and protect people from porn. And they have helped hundreds of thousands of people do that. They've had over 1 million people. Now, I think that's beautiful. And actually, everyone I've met at Covenant Eyes has been incredibly gentle and generous and kind. I mean, just get to know the people. You will see very clearly that this is not some kind of invasive, corrupt scheme. That is a mischaracterization. I can tell you with confidence that this company is not corrupt. This company is not trying to invade people's personal privacy or advance some kind of religious controlling agenda to shame people. Not at all. I see them as amazing ministers of hope, of healing, of supporting relationships, and protecting people from porn. We're on the same mission. And to support that mission, Covenant Eyes has created a very powerful tool, technology that can be helpful or harmful depending on how it's used. And that's why Covenant Eyes has created such a wealth of free resources, ebooks, blogs, podcasts, courses to help you understand how to use this tool, to help it actually support connection and interrupt the cycle of shame, because that's what Covenant Eyes is ultimately all about. And if you go on their website, you'll see that they view the problem as a cycle of shame, which they intend to interrupt. So some people use Covenant Eyes to interrupt the cycle of shame and get greater connection and protection from porn. And the unfortunate truth is that others use it differently, specifically to support purity culture. And if you've been listening to this podcast, you know that I view purity culture as the number one problem that holds people back from outgrowing porn, because purity culture gives you the illusion of freedom without the real thing. So, individuals, organizations, and churches that are characterized by toxic shame and sexual repression and the military mindset of fighting the battle for purity, they are going to use Covenant Eyes to support purity culture, a culture of shame, a culture of fear and control. And that's very sad to me. Now, in the past, I saw Covenant Eyes blog material that used a lot of that language of fighting the battle, fighting lust, and trying to get rid of temptation, and just the kind of surface level, overly spiritual strategies that are not necessarily bad, and yet they can keep you immature if you don't actually do the deeper work of healing and outgrowing porn. Now, recently, more and more, I have seen some deeper resources in the Covenant Eyes blog and in some of their podcast material that has been really encouraging to me. I mean, they are getting deeper. Like, for example, there's a blog post by Ben Bennett recently talking about the deeper longings behind your porn use, which he talked about on this podcast just a few weeks ago. There's also a recent one by Dr. Gregory Popcak called The Root Cause of Porn Addiction. And it's all about attachment theory. Now, all of that stuff is amazing. And I think it's evidence that as time goes on, more and more of us are moving away from the purity culture approach and moving away from the approach of battling my sexuality and moving toward the approach of befriending my sexuality. My friends, the solution to outgrowing porn is not fighting harder. It's not fighting a constant, frustrating, exhausting battle against yourself. The solution is learning to love and be loved in every part of us. Every part of us. Maybe that's an oversimplification. And I'm okay with that. If you want to learn more about what it means to outgrow porn, keep listening to this podcast. Go back to the other episodes and you'll hear a lot more about what it means to heal your childhood trauma, what it means to trace your triggers and see the stories behind them, what it means to understand your sexual fantasies, embrace your God-given desires, and take redemptive risks to live the life you were created for. Okay, that's what we are talking about here at Husband Material, and that's what leads to true freedom and healing. And if you want that, accountability software is not a complete solution to outgrowing porn. It is a complementary supplement. About a year ago, I had a conversation with Sam Black, who is the Director of Recovery Education at Covenant Eyes. And he was telling me very candidly, Covenant Eyes is not a replacement for getting professional help. Covenant Eyes is not a replacement for learning about yourself, about this journey. It's not a replacement for having people in your life who truly know you and love you. In fact, the whole point of the tool is to connect you with those kinds of people. It's also not a replacement for healing childhood trauma and doing the deeper work that we do at Husband Material. However, it is a complementary supplement. It can be a part of your overall plan. In my opinion, Covenant Eyes and other accountability software can be a really helpful supplement in two ways. It could be like a motion sensor light, and it can also be like an alarm system. Let me explain what I mean. At my house, I have a motion sensor light. When it's nighttime and I walk by that motion sensor light by my front door, it goes off and it lights up what was previously in the darkness so that I can see it and so that others who are close to me can see what was in the darkness. They can see me. In the same way, accountability software is like a motion sensor light. That's why that Covenant Eyes sensor app is called the sensor app. It activates and it turns on the light and it forces you out of hiding. It reveals what was in the darkness and it makes you vulnerable by sending a report to an ally or someone who is receiving the information that Covenant Eyes is picking up on. In other words, it makes you more vulnerable. And the reality is, some of us need help with that. If you have a habit of hiding, if it's really, really, really hard for you to talk about your sexual struggles, then this tool automatically brings the darkness into the light. And when you are in that vulnerable place and somebody else knows what you've been accessing online, they can respond in one of two ways: with control or with connection. If someone responds with control, it will actually deepen your shame. If someone responds with connection, it will interrupt the shame cycle. If you have a friend who's on this journey with you and he receives your Covenant Eyes report, he has an opportunity to respond with control or with connection. And if he responds with control, with giving you some kind of advice or trying to fix you, or really anything other than deep emotional connection, validation, grace, and sensitivity and tenderness, then odds are that interaction could actually deepen your shame. And that will actually reinforce the cycle of sexually acting out. If you receive someone's Covenant Eyes report and you respond with curiosity, compassion, connection, and even celebration for what you see, that's good, for the time that they've gone without porn. If you respond with connection, then you are interrupting the shame cycle. And that's what we want. So we have to ask ourselves, if you're using Covenant Eyes, is it deepening your shame or is it interrupting your shame? And the biggest difference is connection. Now, you don't need accountability software to find that connection. However, having this tool can help force you out of hiding if it's really, really hard for you to admit the truth or to open up to someone, especially if you've never talked to anyone about it. There is one more way that I see Covenant Eyes being really helpful, and that's like an alarm system for partners of men who are outgrowing porn. If you are in a romantic relationship with your girlfriend, fiance, or spouse, she deserves to know the truth about the details of your sexual behavior in as much as she desires, because that behavior is impacting her, whether she knows it or not. It is a form of cheating. So, Covenant Eyes, sending reports to your girlfriend or your fiance or your wife, can interrupt deception through disclosure. It's the alarm system saying, hey, something's happening. You're not safe. And she deserves to know when porn is breaking into her relationship. She deserves to know when her house is being invaded by pornography and when you are inviting it into your marriage covenant if you're married. Like an alarm system for your house, Covenant Eyes reports can reinforce truth, transparency, and safety so that your partner can make an informed decision about what she needs to do for herself. I also want to reinforce that she gets to decide how much she wants to know in terms of the details. And that's a whole other topic. We're going to continue to talk about how to interact and relate with partners in future episodes. For now, I want you to know that when you are forced out of hiding through a report about your internet activity automatically being sent to your partner, it not only makes you more vulnerable, it makes her less vulnerable to being deceived and betrayed. It makes her less vulnerable to thinking that the relationship is fine when it's not. And that is a very good thing. So, in other words, accountability software can be a complementary supplement to your healing and growth in interrupting shame and interrupting deception. If you have a habit of hiding your porn use, maybe this is a tool that could help you. And if you're married, then maybe your wife needs to be given the power to make a decision if that's what she wants you to have, so that she can know the truth and feel a little bit less unsafe. Guys, I know this is uncomfortable. It's difficult to talk about these things and to think about these things. At the same time, I hope it's giving you some categories to work through and to wrestle with. Here's what I recommend. Should you get Covenant Eyes or another tool like Accountable to You? My answer is yes, if it would give you more connection, and if it would give you more protection, and especially if it would give your partner more protection. Here's what I recommend. Try it out. See how it affects you. They have a free 14-day trial. They also have a free 30-day trial, which you can find in the show notes. I'm putting a link for that here. I'm not getting compensated for telling you this. I want to help you make an informed decision. So, when you try it out and you see how it affects you, ask yourself, do I feel more connected and protected as a result of this software? Do I feel more connection with my allies and less shame? Or do I feel less connection and more shame? On the other hand, does having this software give you more motivation to stay away from porn? Or is it motivating you to find new ways to get around the software system that you've set up? Is it providing more protection? Or is it creating more distraction? Sometimes we focus so much on what we're trying to stay away from that we don't actually pursue what we're created for. And that's what I believe we should really focus on. So you have to ask yourself, is this more protection or is this distraction? And also, for those of you guys who are married especially, is it giving your partner a greater sense of safety, a greater sense of trust and transparency? And she needs to be the one who makes that decision. She needs to be the one who decides if she would like you to get it or not. It may be that she doesn't want to receive a report every time you act out because that feels intrusive or extremely triggering or controlling for how that affects her. However, she deserves to know the truth. She deserves to know everything. And she gets to decide how that truth comes to her, when it comes to her, and in what level of detail. So it can be a really important supplement to support your relationship. In the end, my best advice is to do what works. Do what works for you. And what works for you when you're in the early stages of healing and outgrowing porn might not work as well later on, or it might not be as necessary. If you do have Covenant Eyes or some other accountability software, I encourage you to view this tool like vulnerability training wheels. It forces you out of hiding. And maybe as you grow, eventually you'll get to the point where you don't need technology to tattletale on you because you are willing and able to be vulnerable and communicate and connect in those moments when you've acted out. And then as you continue to grow, in those moments even before you've acted out. When you can interrupt the shame cycle through connection and co-regulation before sexually acting out, then you have some momentum, my friend, and the training wheels might not be necessary for you at that point. They might be necessary for you to continue rebuilding trust with a partner. However, accountability software is not for everyone. It wasn't for me. That's my story. Your story might be different. Eventually, I hope that you will outgrow accountability software, just like you outgrow porn, because it served you for a time, but eventually you're able to take off your training wheels. At the same time, it may be that you keep on your training wheels because they really help you with connection and protection, both for yourself and for a partner. Accountability software is a tool that automatically turns on the light on secret online sexual activity, and you may need that tool for a time, or you may need it long term. Either way, there's no shame in using it. And there can be a special joy and sense of victory in removing it from your life. Also, acknowledging how that's affecting you. You have to be aware of how the software is affecting you and of how not having the software is affecting you. Continue to be sensitive to your own soul and what you need as an individual and what is needed for the people who are close to you, whether you're single or married. May we all experience the connection and protection that we were created for. So that's what I think. What do you think? I would love to engage with your comments, your thoughts, and your questions inside the Husband Material community, our free private platform for Christian men outgrowing porn. Always remember, you are God's beloved Son, and in you, He is well pleased.